Hi guys, Treeb Squire here, and today I'm going to be bringing you 5 underrated or underappreciated games on PC, because, who doesn't like lists? Now, before I start, there may well be other games out there that deserve to be on this, but these are ones that I've personally played over the years and felt they should have either done better commercially and or deserved a sequel. This list is not for PC exclusive games and does contain some which were multi-platform. So without further ado, let's begin with number 5. Blur is from Bizarre Creations, who created the Project Gotham series and is essentially a cross between Need for Speed and Mario Kart. The story is standard fare in racing games and has you trying to build your reputation on the racing circuit. However, the big difference here is that you can pick up power-ups spread throughout the tracks. Some of these are defensive, like mines and shields, and others are projectiles which you can fire forwards or backwards. In the campaign, you can take on challenges for each of the game's rivals, which once completed allow you to take them on and win their car. It certainly has its faults. The tracks aren't great, the music is forgettable, and the interface needs a bit of work, but I had a lot of fun with Blur, especially when playing online. When there are a lot of racers involved, the matches are extremely chaotic, and combined with all of the different weapons, it can be truly spectacular at times. Unfortunately, Bizarre Creations closed in 2010, so we're probably never going to see a sequel, but if you want a racing game that's a bit different, then I'd recommend giving it a go. Number 4. The Talos Principle is a first-person puzzle game from Crow Team, who are also responsible for the Serious Sam games. Much like The Witness, the game throws you straight into the puzzles from the get-go. The story is drip-fed to you throughout the game via voiceover and a lot of text on computers spread out over the levels. Personally, I didn't get very engaged in the story, but the reason why I enjoyed Talos Principle so much was from the incredibly satisfying puzzles and gorgeous visuals. The game's levels are very open and you can pick and choose which puzzles you want to tackle. Once you've completed all of them in each area, you can then use items collected to progress to the next section. These start off quite easy but become very challenging later on. I'm not actually a huge fan of this genre of games, but I was thoroughly impressed with Talos Principle. This wasn't exactly a commercial failure, and there is talk of a sequel in the works, but I do feel it deserved more attention than it got on release. Number 3. Alpha Protocol by Obsidian Entertainment, who also develop games like Neverwinter Nights 2 and Dungeon Siege 3, is a game that somewhat reminds me of Homefront: The Revolution in terms of its launch. Much like Homefront, Alpha Protocol is a decent game at its core, but it's hindered by being launched well before it was finished and in a terrible state. It did receive a number of patches, however a lot of the problems with the game still persist. If you can look past those, however, then Alpha Protocol is a fantastic action RPG. In the game you play as spy Michael Thornton as he fights his way through a deeply tangled plot involving crime rings and evil corporations. The game's main selling point is around the conversation system and the character interactions. The actions you take and the dialogue choices you make can have huge implications on the story and the characters and can change the course of the game's ending. The extensive unlock system allows you to flesh your character out as a super stealthy spy or an all guns blazing James Bond type. It's incredibly immersive and, once I got past the game's technical limitations, I found myself thoroughly enjoying it. I think if they'd given it another year of development, it would have been considered in much higher regard than it is today. Number 2. Bulletstorm is from developers People Can Fly and Epic Games, the former of which also developed titles like Gears of War and Painkiller. It's essentially a cross between a cheesy 80s action film with a Ryan Reynolds type comedy, but in game form with its foul-mouthed one-liners, dick jokes and corny dialogue, and that's certainly not a bad thing. Fortunately, the game is also a ton of fun. Its combat is based around killing enemies with style. You can do this with weapons like the leash, which grabs enemies and throws them into the air in slow motion, as well as melee, and there are a number of different ways to use your environment. It has huge set pieces, boss battles, great graphics that hold up incredibly well, and it also has a fantastic soundtrack. The ending was disappointing as it was set up for a sequel which never saw the light of day, but the game itself is great fun. If this doesn't convince you to try the game, then I don't know what will. Number 1. Back before the Halo trilogy existed and before they were just churning out Destiny DLC, Bungie created a little gem called Oni, which was released back in 2001. Now, the reason why Oni is a game that I adore so much and I've played it many times over the years since its release is for one reason. It has hands down the best melee combat system in a game I have ever played, outside of beat 'em ups. None of this one button press Arkham crap or QTE heavy fights like Rise. The controls are fairly simple, left click to punch, right click to kick, space to jump and shift to duck. You can also grab enemies and block attacks. With using all of these elements combined, you have a moves list more akin to Street Fighter than any other action game that I can think of. None of this would matter if the AI weren't up to task, but they are surprisingly competent and very unpredictable in combat. They may sometimes retreat if they're losing, or seek out a gun if they see one on the floor which they carry the ammunition for, and sometimes might run off to enable the alarm and get reinforcements. The gun combat is pretty awful, but the hand-to-hand more than makes up for it and is very satisfying. There is a fairly decent story as well, and the game has a pretty cool soundtrack, but the combat is the reason why I love this game so much. The fact that the game still has active players online and is still talked about on forums is testament to that. There are also a ton of mods available for the game that improve the graphics and the core mechanics, as well as many other aspects of the game. It's a surprisingly hard title to get hold of these days, so I'm hoping it finds new life on GOG at some point, so others can experience the game for themselves. And that's it from me. If you disagree or have other games you'd like to mention, let me know in the comments. If you like this video, please let me know with a like and subscribe, or a dislike if you thought it was crap. Thanks for watching, and see you on the next one.